All due respect to the Bitcoin people, it's like an amazing, incredible first generation thing. And we're all here because of Bitcoin. But the problem is you have to upgrade the damn thing.
Charles Hoskinson je matematičar i naučnik koji je najbolje poznat kao jedan od suosnivača Ethereuma. Također je izvršni direktor kompanije Input-Output Hong Kong, koja se bavi razvojem i istraživanjem blockchaina. Hoskinson je i osnivač Cardana, blockchain platforme za sigurne i skalabilne financijske aplikacije. Od samog početka kriptovaluta i blockchain tehnologije, Charles Hoskinson je učestvovao u radu na kriptografiji i blockchain prostoru, a jedan je od glavnih zagovornika upotrebe blockchain tehnologije u raznim industrijama. Njegovo bogatstvo procenjeno je na $580 miliona. Ako želite da znate nešto više o Cardanu, da li i zašto se razlikuje od Bitcoina i koja je njegova budućnost, pogledajte ovaj video do kraja.
Question here is, what is a blockchain and what is a cryptocurrency?
So a blockchain is just a ledger, and really it has three nice properties. You're time-stamped, you're immutable, and auditable, either in a global or a local sense. And so there's all kinds of things mankind has invented where it's really important that when you put some information down, it doesn't change and other people can see it, and that you know when it was put down. For example, a property ledger. So when you buy land or you have rights associated with land, like mineral rights or water rights or these things, you'd like to transitively see how does it go from Alice to Bob to Charlie to Jim and so forth, and what was the state of these things as they were transitioning. So how much did they pay, when did it occur, et cetera, the metadata that follows that. Okay, well, normally these types of ledgers are so important that they're managed either by governments or regulated entities. And the issues are that while they can be efficient, they're generally brittle to political manipulation, and they're brittle to geopolitical events. For example, when Syria fell apart, the very first thing ISIS did is they started saying, hey, the ownership of the land is going to fundamentally change. We've decided that, this guy over here now owns all these things. And then when peace comes, like, how do you unwind all of that, put it all back together? So the power of a blockchain is that it gives you a transnational way of sorting all these details out, putting all together in a place that that even if it's inconvenient to a very powerful actor, that it will still stay preserved. This is an asymmetry we haven't had as a society. Usually kings and empires, they have the ability to decide what's true. And then suddenly you have this asymmetrical thing that is above them, kind of like a synthetic laws of physics. And once something goes in there, that that's there. Okay, so that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that it's auditable, meaning that instead of saying only the high cleric or the president or, some very special club of people get to see what's going on, suddenly now all the people can actually see who owns what, where. Like, imagine a tax system where, the ProPublica just leaked the taxes of all these different billionaires and said, well, how much do they make and how much do they pay? Well, imagine a tax system where that's just done by default, or other social systems where this type of information is put in by default. So it's tremendously useful, this type of structure and all kinds of things, medical records, supply chains. Just a good thought experiment is, I travel a lot. I've been to 52 countries in the last 5 years. Imagine if I got sick in Zimbabwe, I get hit by a car or something, and I'm unconscious, and a Zimbabwean doctor calls my doctor in Colorado and says, hey, I need all of Charles's medical records. He's unconscious right now, but I needed to treat him because he's quite ill. They'd say, who is this person in Zimbabwe? Why, I don't know you. I can't give you his records. I need his consent. Oh, no, he's unconscious in the hospital. I can't do it. Well, a broker system that would allow the movement of medical records would be an example of what a blockchain could potentially do in the foreseeable future. Cryptocurrency is just an application that runs on top of blockchain, because it just turns out that when you issue property, you also can issue tokens of value. And then you can have a monetary policy. It could be inflationary or deflationary. You can have demurrage, where it decays over time, or whatever have you. And the very same mechanics that would ensure your property records are secure, your medical record access is secure, could also be applied for the ownership of the cryptocurrency. And again, you can either be completely transparent and everybody can see what everybody owns, and that's what Bitcoin does. Or you can be as opaque as you seek to be. That's what Zcash basically attempts to do. It says, hey, let's keep these things as private as possible. But they have relatively the same mechanics.
We pull back, historically speaking, and in terms of the big picture of cryptocurrency real quick, and ask the question, what is Cardano? We'll have one sentence. What's that one sentence going to be? And in general, what's like the vision in the context of the history of cryptocurrency? You have like this whiteboard overview video that you talk about the 3 generations of cryptocurrency, where Cardano is the 3rd. So that's like 5 different questions, way of asking the exact same thing. You can answer however the hell you want.
I always term Cardano as like a FOSS, a financial operating system, and nobody likes it, and everybody picks on me for using that term. But basically the idea is that, the world runs on systems, especially the financial world. You have, the BIS and SWIFT and all this other stuff. And these protocols allow you to move value around and represent things like identity and allow you to express yourself in some way. And they don't work so well for people who aren't in rich countries. And so the point of what we do, or at least what I do and what my company does, is we think a lot about how do we build a universal protocol that does all the stuff the legacy system has, but just does it better, faster, and cheaper for everybody in the world. And everybody has equal access to it. So it's the people's protocol. You have a situation where the guy in Senegal has the same access that I do, or Bill Gates does, or someone else who's kind of higher on the spectrum of wealth and power. And so that is what we seek to achieve. But then the question is, well, is Cardano the solution? Is that thing? And the answer is no, because you need a lot more evolution. You need decades of evolution to kind of work your way there. And in many ways, the work is never quite done, but it's better than what came before. Why? Because you have a realization that first, the control of the system needs to be more balanced and nuanced, and it needs to be more democratic. So there's this sustainability component of like who's in charge and how do you pay for things. Well, the system can print its own money, so it always has the ability to have a budget. Okay, so there's a treasury idea. And then there's a voting thing. Well, the same things that allow you to move money around allow you to represent votes. So you can do e-voting with the type of system. Okay. And what's nice about it is if you build the right philosophy within the system, it doesn't need founders. This is the great lesson of Satoshi. It doesn't need founders to be able to get there. So, if you look at the academic side, that's very decentralized. We have more than 30 different contributors for the 105 papers, and that set keeps growing. Within the next 5 years, it'll probably be 200, 300, 400 different scientists from all across the world, some from Russia and some from India, some from China and some from Japan and America and Africa and South America. And the faces change, the languages change, the cultures change, but the process stays the same. And that is a permanent organ within what we have constructed as a system. And it's the same situation entering marketplaces. Like we entered Ethiopia. What are we doing there? We have 5 million people in Ethiopia. We're getting them digital identity, and we're dragging that digital identity into the system, because that's the most fundamental thing of a financial operating system. You need to know who people are in order to be able to do business with them, give them credit, be able to give them economic agency and sort of thing. But once they're there, they're going to grow up with that system. They're going to deploy applications on that system. They're going to build on that system. They're going to use it every day for getting a loan or payments and so forth. But basically the concept is that you have something and you want to be able to store it, transform it, trade it, and use it to survive. And the question is, what rails do you do that on? Do you do those on centralized controlled rails where there are these third parties that are basically able to live off those things, become very fat and nepotistic? Or do you want to do it on rails where there's no middleman? You have a direct relationship with whoever you're doing business. And if you invite more people to the transaction, they're middlemen of value, not necessity.
What's your intuition with Cardano having the proof of stake and then eventually smart contracts versus the Bitcoin with layer 2 technologies? What's your intuition why one might be more successful than the other?
So the problem with Bitcoin is it is so slow. It's like the mainframe programming of the past. And it's the only reason it's still around is because there was so much invested in keeping it around that we just kind of have to leave it there. And one day COBOL will die. There's nothing about it from a collection of USPs that's particularly desirable. You have extremely long settlement time. You have extremely low programmability. It is not aware of any other system. There's no native way of issuing an asset in that system. You can't even do a pull transaction. I mean, you can't do anything that's interesting or unique there. And yeah, all due respect, it's, all due respect to the Bitcoin people, it's like an amazing, incredible first generation thing. And we're all here because of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. But the problem is you have to upgrade the damn thing. Just because you were a high school football star doesn't mean that 30 years later, you're still a high school football star in the same shape. You got the beer belly, you're old, you're not doing this thing again. And that's what Bitcoin has to do. There's fundamental improvements that I think Bitcoin can make at the protocol level that would actually make it an incredibly competitive system. Like if they wanted to keep Nakamoto consensus, proof of work, there's ways to enhance proof of work. I mean, Emin Gansir did this with Bitcoin NG, Pramod Viswanas did this with Prism. Make it 10,000 times faster, and you don't compromise the fundamental security assumptions that the system has.
Competitor cryptocurrencies like Polkadot. Yeah. What are some interesting differences between Cardano and Polkadot?
Polkadot really has focused a lot on commercial adoption, Silicon Valley adoption, getting real use and utility, I say in a much more sustainable way than Ethereum is focused on. Ethereum was kind of a spray and pray thing. Polkadot was more of like, hey, let's go ahead and actually curate our ecosystem more carefully, and we're going to build it in a way where there's predictable or as predictable a cost as possible. And that's so important for a business. It's not necessarily important for an experiment or a startup where they're just trying to get population as quickly as possible. We'll figure out later. But if you're actually sitting here saying, I need to know what my expenses are 3 years, 5 years, 10 years into the future, you need predictability there. Mm-hmm. I think they have a better shot of it than anything in ETH-2 or with currently Ethereum. Now, the big contrast between the two systems, though, is we actually have native multi-asset. We have a different accounting model. I think our base ledger is far more expressive. Our rate of evolution with proof of stake is much faster than theirs because they're based on derivative work, and we already have Ouroboros Omega and other things there. I think we have a better sidechain model will come because we have something called Mithril for that, but we learned a lot from their work. The other thing is that we thought about governance a lot more carefully, in my view. And we have Catalyst and Voltaire, and really the key there is saying, how do we make sure that every single person who holds data can participate in the network? That wasn't a high design priority of Polkadot. It was more fast commercial adoption, the acquisition of customers. We'll come to governance later. And those were just different business philosophies. But it's nice to have a competitor like that. And oftentimes I've said that Polkadot's like Ethereum 1.5. It's what ETH2 probably should have been. There was what Vitalik wanted to do, which was incredibly aggressive and brilliant, but it's a lot. And there's so much execution risk in that plan. And I think they've had like 6 years of playing around with it. Had they gone down the Polkadot road, they probably would have been in market with it in 2018. And because they already had the network effect, they would have had years of building on that, iterating that. And they already had a path to it too. All they had to do was just give Elaine Shih and her cohorts at Cornell, a $5-10 million grant. Snow White would have been the dominant protocol, not Ouroboros in the proof of stake space. So it's really fascinating historically when you look at these things, the rivalries and what they did and what they didn't do. And, Gavin had a chance to have C++ Ethereum be used as as IBM's enterprise blockchain. The only reason they didn't do it is, it was licensed GPL, and I think they wanted to relicense Apache. If you ever talk to Bob Summerwall, he was there at the time, and he had this amazing story about like these terrible fights where, it's like, guys, just relicense the goddamn code. Let's figure out a way to make this happen so that we can, get this huge network effect of being basically IBM's play. Mm-hmm. They didn't do it. They created Fabric, these types of things. So there's a lot of lore and stories in that respect. But the space is better because of Polkadot. And there's a lot of good people there. Web3 is a good concept.
So this idea of governance, what's your vision for a decentralized, secure governance system?
So the first thing you have to do when you build these types of systems and they get to a certain scale is you have to build some mechanism for people who are interested in governance to self-select and participate. Just create a collection bucket. In Bitcoin, we had Bitcoin Talk and Bitcoin Reddit and these things, and eventually the GitHub repos and these things. There was a place to go if you were interested. And you need some sort of change management system where people who want to evolve the system can write it down in a very careful way. So in Bitcoin's case, it was a Bitcoin improvement proposal. On Ethereum, it's the Ethereum improvement proposal. And for us, it's the SIP, the Cardano improvement proposal. But it's just a structured way of discussing how you wish to change. Then there's a question of, do you want to do this implicitly or explicitly? In the case of Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's an implicit system. So there's no on-chain voting. There's no like 5 people said this and 4 people said this, so we do this. In the case of Cardano, we're actually explicitly inviting this. This is one of the biggest differentiators between Cardano, Polkadot, EOS, and these other things, is that we're really serious about governance to the extent that we're actually doing foundational research in e-voting. We're building new voting systems. And the long and the short is that we want more and more people to participate in voting for things.
Ako vam se svideo ovaj video, kliknite na like i subscribeite se na naš kanal za još ovakvih videa. Također, u opisu ovog videa imate link za besplatnu e-knjigu kao i besplatan kurs o kripto trgovanju.